science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Rumination salutations, all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to Exofathom. This is our first episode of Exobits, premiering Fridays at 8 p.m. What we wanted to do here was try to distill our conversations that are usually an hour and a half long, to something that's a little bit more bite-sized, maybe about 30 minutes. So welcome. I am your host, Nick, and I am joined by my lovely co-hosts as always. Ayla, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday, everybody. And how about those wooden blocks, huh? And that intro song? It's good stuff.
Wooden blocks? What are you talking about?
Yeah, during the song, there's that.
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
And I was listening. I was like, those are wooden blocks. Like, we're
Okay.
rocking it and
Yeah.
appreciating it.
All right. Well, and we have our host here, Mike. How you doing, man?
I think I'm melting. I'm actually pretty sure I'm melting.
Dude, I am like sweltering right now. I'm like in a room with all the windows closed and all the doors closed and sweating. So, yeah, we hope you enjoy this episode, you guys. We will be doing our best to remain interesting while we slowly dehydrate.
Yeah, I've clearly already gone crazy. I'm off. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I think I'll be okay.
There you go. That does usually help. Well, yeah, so thanks for joining us, everybody. Just want to do a little bit of promo on the front end here. Please visit us at thinkering.space. There you'll get all of the shows that we have to offer, whether that's Exofathom or the Thinkering Report, or If Numbers Can Talk, or the Plank with Joe. Please give us a follow on Facebook and YouTube, and follow Exofathom on all the socials. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on YouTube. With that aside, I wanted to thank you guys for joining me, my co-hosts, and basically I wanted to introduce this sort of cone idea. Now, I've heard about this before, and I've tried to read them a couple times, and for the life of me, most of them didn't make any sense to me until I realized that that's kind of the point. So let me just do a little intro into what Zen Koans are for everybody, and then maybe we'll get a little bit of your input to you guys. So a koan is a short story or dialogue used in Zen practice. They were traditionally used by Zen teachers to test the progress of a student. In modern Zen, koans are often used in conjunction with meditation practice and formal Zanzen or Dharma interviews. They are meant to focus the mind on the central question of Zen by creating great doubt, quote unquote. And before I get into the koan that we're going to be talking about today, have you guys ever read these or have you known about them before? I mean, I've kind of always heard about them, but it's not something I really looked into too deeply.
It's not. It's not. Think something. It's not. It's not. That is a hard two words to say together. But to jump right in, I would say that I didn't know what you were talking about until you mentioned that one of them is a tree falling in the woods. Does it make a sound? That's like kind of one of those kind of koans. And so, yes, and I learned about that particular one in The Simpsons when Bart was trying to become a pro golfer, but at putt-putt golf, and Lisa taught him those. So beyond that, I haven't actually. I don't think I knew the formal words. I'm really excited to read some actual real koans and more in depth and chat about it for sure.
Another golden 1993 reference from Ayla. Thank you, Ayla.
Of course, always available for those.
What about you, Mike?
Just in passing, never any sort of rigorous study or looking them up or anything of that sort.
Yeah, same here. But I thought this would be kind of fun to do, especially for this little new segment we're doing on Fridays. We want to make sure the conversation stays, tight and concise. So we thought that what better way than to showcase a confounding riddle that we can argue about for 30 minutes. So here we go. Without much further ado, this is the riddle that we are going to be talking about today. And it's called the first principle, and it's a Zen Koan. And here it is. When one goes to Obaku Temple in Kyoto, he sees carved over the gate the words "the first principle." The letters are usually large, and those who appreciate calligraphy always admire them as being a masterpiece. They were drawn by Kosan 200 years ago. When the master drew them, he did so on paper from which the workman made the large carving in wood. As Kosan sketched the letters, a bold pupil was with him who made several gallons of ink for calligraphy and who never failed to criticize his master's work. "That is not good," he told Kosan after his first effort. "How is this one?" "Poor, worse than before," pronounced the pupil. Kosan patiently wrote one sheet after another until 84 first principles had accumulated, still without the approval of the pupil. Then, when the young man stepped outside for a few moments, Kosan thought, "Now this is my chance to escape his keen eye." And he wrote hurriedly, with a free mind from distraction, the first principle. "A masterpiece," pronounced the pupil. Now, when I first read that, obviously it took me a couple times to read it. And I noticed this with Zen Koans is that they kind of end abruptly, and you're like, wait, is there more to this conversation, or that's it? And no, that's the entirety of it. So I'm just going to kick it over to you guys first and foremost about what this might elicit from you and what you might think or feel about this particular little tale. Ayla?
Oh, thanks. Well, so, I first read it. I kind of had the same reaction. I was thinking to myself, wait, okay, where's the tension? And I think I asked you that question. I was like, okay, in the tree falls in the woods example, I understand that. How can sound exist if no one's around to hear it? But this one I kind of had trouble with. And so I just had to think about it a little bit more. And I did look up a little bit of like what this was talking about. One of the things that came up was about, is this a description of Zen mind? That calmness when you empty your cup in order to receive? Maybe. But what's interesting is that got me really thinking. And I think my biggest takeaway is just the idea of having doubt in your sphere of influence. That, here you have a pupil who's a critic, and criticizing you at every moment and saying, no, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And then the minute this pupil leaves, suddenly this person can have clarity and focus in without trying to make this other person happy, but just having original thought and creation. I wrote down a couple other thoughts, but that's kind of the one big takeaway for me was just to not let the naysayers keep you down. Let the haters drink their haterade and keep doing your thing.
Yeah, well, I would say that you are 100% wrong on that. So, no, I'm kidding. Just a joke. The fun thing about this is that there are no right. The fun thing about this is that there are no right answers. So it's interesting what comes to mind first. What about you, Mike? What came to your mind first?
Just that energy of somebody watching over your work, like having an audience while you work. And the only way to produce your best work in this case, I guess, with a pupil critic would be to be able to write it when they're not looking, because that relieves some of that pressure, right? Like someone's not watching you, or this person you're trying to impress, regardless of titles. There's another thing, from my understanding in Zen, is just there's nothing. It's about it. Yeah. And so that change or like that emotional energy or whatever it is, that change allows you to maybe do better work. Like,
I would agree.
According to the pupil, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting because I can totally sympathize with this guy because I can play pool like the best pool player in the world as long as nobody's watching me. Like, I have legitimately actually played a perfect game before while nobody was watching. But of course, how can I prove that if there's nobody who can witness it?
Yeah.
You big tree.
No, but I really do get I get choky when people are watching when I'm trying to do something, and like I can feel their anticipation, and it's very distracting.
I get one or two ways. I either get I either feed into it, like it just gives me a calm and calmness and energy, or I just freak the fuck out.
Well, and it's funny, when I was writing down some notes about this, for some reason imposter syndrome came up to me, and that's kind of that piggybacks off of what you just said, Mike, because if someone's observing you and they're like a fan and they're like, yeah, you got this pool game, I'm going to be thinking, I can't let them down, they don't know, I'm going to like stress out about it, versus if they're like booing me the whole time, then I'm going to be like, oh no, I suck, and so I think like that's so interesting that you mentioned just the audience, or this idea of like others' influences. And
well, and I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting too that really imposter syndrome can't really exist without an audience. So removing that microscope from the situation. And I think further, it's interesting because I think this touches a little bit on the concept of not wanting to see a process, especially in art, or even in, like, we don't even have to go highfalutin. Like, you don't want to watch the cook making your meal most of the time, if we're being honest with ourselves, if we
unless
look
it's
at restaurants. Unless it's hibachi, yeah.
I'm kind of see, I've always been curious in like how things work, so it could just be like, I think it'd be cool to eat in the kitchen.
As somebody who's eaten in many kitchens, I would have to tell you. I'd have to tell you might want to reconsider, but that's okay. I mean, it depends on the kitchen, obviously. But I think, to me, it's just kind of like there's something about witnessing the process that, in my mind, takes away from the splendor of seeing it complete in the first moment. Like, so if it's, say, the world's tallest building or whatever, like the one in the Burj Khalifa in Abu Dhabi. So the people who live in that area have seen that thing being built over the past 6 or 7 years or whatever. And they're not, when they finally see that it's complete, it's no different than the scaffolding that they were looking at before. But if you were to go there as somebody who's never been there before and witness it for your very eyes, you'd see it as a splendorous sort of monument of human capability. I think you would still see that if you were there, as like watching it being constructed. But I think there's a little something that's robbed away from watching the process, if that makes any sense.
So yeah, that makes total sense, because this guru guy made 83. I don't know. He made a whole bunch of ones, and the pupil was like, "Oh, poor, worse than before." So yeah, if he didn't see them, who's to say he wouldn't have seen the first one and been like, "Whoa, that's so cool, man."
Yeah, exactly. That's true. That's kind of what I think about it, at least. Like the pupil is being super critical, and I think Mike is right. There is something about having that realm of influence interject while you're creating, and especially when you're creating. It's one thing when you're doing kind of menial work and your boss might be watching you or keeping an eye on you or checking in or whatever, but when it's a creative process that kind of has to capture a certain level of magic, it really interferes when people are watching as well, because I don't think that pure kind of creation happens without a vacuum. I think that you need that vacuum in order to create something that we truly revere as either art or, some sort of engineering marvel or whatever.
I think you can definitely, though, construct a vacuum, because I've seen it done before. I've seen people operate in a way where artistically you could have a say, but they're not bulging from their line, and it's really impressive to see, because of the fact that just a normal population, we're so easily influenced.
Right.
Just to see somebody take on a artistic endeavor or a creative endeavor, and be able to create that vacuum is pretty awesome.
That is true, and I think that the film industry can kind of do that pretty well. They have a way of kind of compartmentalizing the creativity, and also a way of keeping the environment sterile to keep the magic alive, if you will. And I think that there's something about that, and I think that this even on a more personal level for everybody, this concept is like allowing other people to make decisions for you, or allowing other people's input to influence the way you see the world. There's this subtleness about allowing another entity to interact with your reality that is really vulnerable. And I think that being aware of that is a good thing, because sometimes you need an absence of that witness to create.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And you know what I was thinking just specifically about Hollywood as well. And I'm really curious to hear what you think. So like, what about those actors that, demand, okay, nobody can look at me, I'm creative. Right? Like we chastise them. It's like those jerks, but it's like, I can see where they're coming from, but like Jared Leto and his shenanigans for the Joker Suicide Squad, it seems a little too far. So I don't know. I mean,
it depends on what you deliver. Like I used to mock that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Now I understand it, because you do have to get into a headspace sometimes to deliver an effect, to do something, like to be creative, or like with acting, like you sometimes you should get into a headspace.
Guys, we might see Little Mike get arrested here. What's going on over there? Your thoughts?
I'm sorry. Already I'm being swatted. I feel so famous.
I know, right?
What is this?
We're such a big
exciting.
Live on
Please bear with us.
I'm sorry. That is the nature sounds in Los Angeles.
That is true. It's the wild ambulance herd.
The humble wild ambulance herd. They're so majestic.
They are. They're really resplendent creatures.
Oh man. Well, we got some comments.
They're going down to the old gas station.
Well, we have a couple folks joining us live. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Somebody wrote.
We have it on the screen here. Yannicka commented that she finally gets to see us live. So thanks for watching, Yannicka. And then
we're listening.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, listening. And then we got our buddy Keelan here from Thinkering and If Numbers Can Talk. He says, I think the pro athletes can feel like an imposter in some moments, and that's why practice exists, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that there's something true about that, Keelan. Like the concept of like the practice, even if you are under the pressure of and scrutiny of a witness. I think you can practice your way through that, definitely. And I don't necessarily think that you can't overcome that obstacle. I just think that it is an obstacle for a lot of people, especially when, it's one thing when it's physicality and sort of like talent. And then it's another thing when you're trying to write a poem, So it's like...
There's also too a lot in programming. Like as a programmer, I felt it numerous times, and I can only assume that it's like anxiety from not doing something before at a professional level, and being able to do it and being able to do it well. And so then you're like, you kind of look at the observations in your life, like there's no way I could be able to do this. What the hell am I doing here?
You're right. Well, that gets into the imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And, bringing it back to the Koan as well, it's almost as if, like, what if you were to take the master as, like, that connection to source or something, and then the pupil is your busy mind that's constantly naysaying.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, you can kind of coalesce both of these entities into one person, and it's kind of like the left side, right side of your brain, where it's the pupil is the taskmaster, sort of
Slave
left side of your
driver.
brain. Yeah. And then the right side is like trying to be all hippy dippy and creative. And, it's like, all right, man, I'll do 84 kanjis for you. Like,
It happens. You got to do it sometimes.
you do.
Yes.
And I think there's something kind of interesting about that balance, because like Keelan said, the idea of practice. And so sometimes like the criticalness of the pupil is necessary to bring out the genius in the master.
Yep. I think like as we touched on progress versus the splendor of a final product, I think there's if you allowed for like time to be a dimension in your analyzation of beauty, I think there's something real special in progress. But I don't think it's the level of like I should appreciate one version of a movie I saw at a theater, and now you've come out with another version of that same movie with updated graphics. You want me to pay more money to see it?
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily like that. Like there is something nice being on the creation side of art.
Oh, I
get to
certainly
see that progress.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think you're right. And I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with the witnessing of the process. I just, as I said, I think that there's a little bit of that emotional punch that is taken away. It's not a lot. I'm not saying it's like it's a total loss, but I think there is just a small amount of the punch that's taken away when you get to see the process of how the thing that's created. Now, but part of that is seeing the thing for the first time before everybody else anyways. So, you do get to have that moment in yourself when you finally get to see the process, completed before, say the public.
Yeah.
I'm chuckling to myself because I'm thinking about Pam's mural from The Office. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah. Well, in the later episodes,
I think so. Yeah, where
the one
she's
that
trying
got
to
butts
paint.
drawn over it.
Yes, the one with the butts. But before the butts, she was trying to paint, and she had this blank canvas and just kind of put some colors. And some like guy from the warehouse was he was standing right under her, and he had his little hands on his hips, and she's trying to paint, and he's just staring.
Yeah.
And she's like, "It's gonna be a minute." He's like, "It's okay, you paint." Okay. He's just talking to her the whole time, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's like such a genius demonstration of this." And I think you're right. Like you can definitely create beautiful things with witnesses, and like Keelan said, definitely athletes are tapping into some sort of ether of potential when they go out in the field and all that stuff. But I think it's funny too, just the idea of being witnessed. The Navajos actually have a monster that's just about staring. So like if somebody's staring at you too long, there's like a Navajo slang word that likens them to this monster that will look at you until you die.
Oh, geez.
And the idea is
honestly, your culture is so terrifying sometimes.
Oh, man.
So awesome. What do you mean? Sounds amazing.
You guys, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like the deep Germanic culture that has like all the monsters that come for the little kids, as like parables to teach them to do the right things. Like it's very similar to that, where it's like
Krampus.
Yes, exactly. If you don't brush your teeth, a demon from the woods is going to steal you and then make, I don't know, bread out of your feet.
Oh, we could do a whole episode with. Have you ever heard of the La Llorona?
No.
Is that the lady that's always looking for children?
The crying lady.
Oh yes, I think you've told me about that. Yeah.
I have a great story about it, but we should make that its own episode.
Oh, definitely. We can put that in the cryptid series for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think there's one thing that I wanted to mention again, because I think I brought it up just briefly, but there's a certain level of vulnerability in creation. And so I think that what Mike touched on, especially in this sort of like the movie process, is that you're in an atmosphere, or like when he said creating a vacuum, you're in an atmosphere of people who all believe and who all believe in the goal. And I think belief has a lot to do with the sort of like subtler magic of reality manipulation. And so I think that the concept in the koan is that the pupil wasn't believing in the master. He was being critical. So the master couldn't perform in that manner. It was only until he had the vacuum of the pupil's absence that he could create. And then lo and behold, obviously the pupil, there's probably literally no difference between all of these kanjis. It's just the fact that he was able to create it in that vacuum.
He didn't have a hype crew.
He didn't have a hype crew. Yeah.
Maybe that pupil went outside and was like, man, why am I such an asshole to my teacher?
Yeah, right.
What is wrong with me? He goes back in and is like, you know what? This is fine. This is great.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. Sorry about that. I was being a real jerk. Well, it's funny because Ayla kind of mentioned that when I brought this whole Koan up to her. She's like, why is the pupil such a jerk? And I'm like, it's interesting because in these sort of like Zen riddles and a lot of like sort of Eastern parables, the student is always very arrogant, and it's the master's gentle hand that kind of teaches the student a lesson. So they always kind of have this sort of like bombastic pupil that gets out of line and then has to be sort of subtly schooled by the master.
Bombastic.
Bombastic.
Such a good word.
Yeah. So it goes in there like,
So like from that pupil master relationship, there's often like one, you have like the ego, the base ego of the pupil, and then two, at least I think you should have high standards for your master. I mean, whoever you like choose your mentor to be or unchosen, as most jobs are now, as far as crafts go. Whoever your mentor is, like, it's okay to have a high standard and be critical. I think, in fact, like, it's the two roles playing out quite naturally and beautifully. Like you said, like, for some reason, the pupil's always the sort of bombastic, arrogant, whereas, like, it's like a weird, like, Brazilian jiu-jitsu morality tale.
Right, exactly.
Sort of, like, grabs at people in the guard and, like, is able to do something.
Yeah,
and then
it's kind of like the wind blowing against a strong tree, right? And so the wind howls very, violently, and the tree just barely bends and, weathers the storm. So and that's kind of a Zen principle as well. So, the master kind of always inhabits this sort of Zen, obviously master. So, yeah.
It's a heavy word.
It is.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's such a cool point that you bring up also, the like interplay of pupil and teacher, or student and teacher, because if this master was always told he's great, he could go on to make some really shitty things, like think about it. Like, if you're surrounded by people that are always saying you're doing great, you aren't really challenged to push yourself further. So there's a certain recognition that that's needed, but then also there needs to be like that pause too.
Absolutely.
It's a pull and pull. Like, there's definitely a feeling within filmmaking that you can't, or at least I haven't been able to find anywhere else doing anything else. So belief is a very powerful component to reality. And it will let you make these crazy awesome stories, but it will also get a whole crew to make a really bad movie.
That's very true. Yeah, and it only takes one dissenting, person to screw up the sort of magical mojo of everybody's energy trying to complete one goal.
Yeah.
That's
whether
where you
it's
get
good or bad.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how you get Suicide Squad, man. That show, or that movie is so bad. Yes. By the way, speaking of having like pupils or like a witness, like, it's just really funny that for this Koan we have more comments. We have people listening.
Oh yeah.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks for
thank you
joining
very
us on
much.
a hot Friday evening.
Yeah.
It's too hot.
It is way too hot.
Super
They
hot.
have air conditioning when they make this this duplex. Why?
At least you're on the bottom floor.
Oh man.
There's nothing worse than the heat rising to the second floor and you just can't do anything.
Yeah,
all
lay on
sides.
the floor.
Well, as we slowly melt into our seats, is there anything that you guys wanted to add about this one?
Let's see. Well, I see there's a comment from Keelan. He said loss of that's a hard word. Anonymity.
Anonymity. Yeah. Here, I'll
Anonymity?
put it up. There we go.
There it is. I can see it. Loss of that could become a part of the antisocial like situations.
Yeah.
I could see that. I mean, yeah, because you think about like when you're in a social situation and you feel a little bit of that social anxiety, you don't want to talk and speak out loud. Yeah, definitely. It would have that sense of, not
Like
wanting to
the
criticize.
spotlight is on you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Exactly.
too, like if you are if you're a minority in an opinion of any topic, you really don't want to speak in a social group.
Yeah, that's very
Like,
Yeah.
true. That's
It's
very
hard
true.
to be the dissenting opinion in a group of people.
Oh, true. Very true. I
All
don't know.
right.
We can't go into that too much because of the times, but y'all know.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah. We got
I'm
another one
sorry,
here.
Mom. I can't clean up my
Mom's
language.
listening.
Oh, I'm so
is that a
sorry.
threat?
Mom's listening.
No, I know. I'm kidding.
I said some
Oh
cuss
my gosh,
words.
it's followed by Baba Yaga.
She's like, my mom's like, I'm listening, you guys. Be on your best behavior. Well, thanks for listening, Mom. We love you. And yeah.
No.
And then we got Yannicka here saying, oh, for our cryptid series, maybe doing Baba
Yeah.
Yaga. That would be a good call for sure.
100%.
For sure.
And you're awesome.
Yes.
Aw.
Yes. Thank you very much, you guys, for listening. Is there anything else we wanted to mention?
I think that covers it for me. I don't know about you, Mike or Nick.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good. Like that formation of a vacuum is important. Right? But also being alone is very important as well. Like, but if you could do what you can do alone to create something with people watching, that's some dangerous fire you're playing with.
That is true. Yeah. If you're able to replicate the things that you can do in a vacuum in front of other people, that's when you've truly become a master.
Standing in your convictions.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, you guys. We really appreciate you listening. This has been our first episode of Exobits. The goal of this sort of series that we're going to be doing on Fridays at 8 p.m. is to give you small distillized versions of our longer shows on Monday, which are usually about an hour and a half. But so if this is something that you enjoyed, please, thank you all you guys that have commented. Thank you for everybody who is watching. Please leave us a comment about what you might think about this koan particularly, and we'll be definitely responding in the comments. Stay tuned on Sunday. I believe we're doing a Thinkering at 3 p.m., so that'll be great. And thank you very much for listening, you guys. Please follow us on Exofathom, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. We're really trying to get our following a little bit bigger, and I know that we will eventually once we crack the code of the internet algorithms. But in the meantime, we really appreciate the few of you that are watching, because you mean a lot to us, and we really appreciate you guys listening. So until next time, Cognonauts, you guys stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.